you ready to master the waves of medical device product development? Well, wax up your surfboard because you are listening to Inspired by Amua. And here is your medical device product development expert, that Hawaiian-hearted hostess who will help you hang 10, Megan Alonso.
And aloha. You're listening to Inspired by Amua, where we help you master the waves of medical product development. Each week, we interview guests that educate, guide, and inspire to give you the skills that you and your product need to hang 10. If this is your first time listening, Amua is spelled I-M-U-A, and it's a Hawaiian word that means to advance forward with passion despite rough waves. There are plenty of those in the medical device industry, so keep listening because we've got you covered. So today's guest is actually my dad. We've had quite a few family members on the show recently, but I think this is the last one, at least for now. And so my dad has had some knee problems. He had an injury back in his 30s, and he had a knee replacement last year. So he's going to talk about that and just the experience with his new knee and what's changed, what's improved, his overall quality of life with that. So we can dive into that interview. So please help me welcome my dad, Ed Flynn. So Dad, are you ready to hang 10?
Yes, let's commence hanging.
All right. So I mentioned that you had a knee injury back when you were younger. So I know the story, but our listeners don't. So just enlighten us and tell us what you were doing.
Yeah, I was playing touch football in the Navy back in 1976. And I had just caught a pass going to the right sideline and was turning to head downfield. And I heard a pop, and the next thing I knew, I was in a heap on the ground. And so it was diagnosed as a torn medial meniscus and a torn ACL. And a couple of weeks later, I had surgery, and they removed the ACL. I guess at that time they didn't do many reconstructions, and since I was 32, there really was no need for it. And they took out the meniscus, and a couple of weeks later, I was walking on it, and that was that.
So that was a pretty fast recovery then, huh?
Yeah, as I recall, it was. It was pretty sore, but I, was able to walk with crutches very quickly and was back to work shortly. I was, at the time, I was flying in the Navy, so I didn't fly for a while, but once I had my strength back and range of motion back, I got back in the air too.
Mm-hmm. And then so after that, fast forward, when was it you had another surgery in the 90s, right?
Yes, it was 1991. I was having trouble with the knee, and I went to see the first surgeon was an F4s surgeon. He'd long gotten out, so the surgeon I saw the second time was a surgeon over in Dallas, and Dr. Robert Stone. And he told me that, he would be happy to do the surgery. And he said about 70% of the people would see a lot of improvement, 15% would see no improvement, and 15% would see some improvement. And he said, I expect you to be in the some improvement category. And I was, but it was worth it. I went through that, got some improvement for a number of years. But he cautioned me on my exercise routine. He said, there is very little cartilage left, and very soon you're going to be bone on bone. And so he suggested that I stop running and stop jumping around and playing tennis and all that stuff, which I foolishly ignored. But and he was right. Over time, I had to address more surgery with the knee.
Mm-hmm. So I still remember part of your therapy regimen, and
I think
that entailed sitting on your knee. So
it did, yeah. I had a lot of trouble straightening the knee, and he suggested, he said, I know you have little kids. He said, just put your knee up on, lay down on the sofa, put your knee up on the arm of the sofa and have your kids sit on it. He said, that'll help.
Yeah, and I think it
And
was
it did.
5 or 10 minutes each evening.
I'd forgotten about that.
So you mentioned flying. You have a pretty interesting flying background. So tell our listeners what you were doing in the Navy and then what you did after the Navy.
Well, yeah, that was pretty much my life after college. I went in the Navy and went through flight school and ended up on the West Coast at Miramar Naval Air Station in San Diego and flew the F4, the Navy's F4 model, F4J, off two aircraft carriers, the Enterprise and the America, and two tours to Vietnam. And after that, I had a 2-year exchange tour with the Air Force, flying F4s down in MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, which was very enjoyable. Then I got out and flew the F4 in the Naval Reserve for several years, too. And while I was in the reserves, I was also flying with the airline. I had a short tour with Eastern Airlines back in the 70s, but in the early 80s, I went to work for Southwest Airlines and stayed with them till I retired in 03. At that time, I had to retire at age 60, and I turned 60 in November of 03 and retired. So a very, very good career.
So this story isn't really related to your knee, but tell the story of your retirement, your last flight on Southwest, and the surprise that you had, because that is a good story.
Yeah, my Karen, my wife, was cooked up a deal where unfortunately Megan couldn't make it, but Patrick and Danny and my other 2 kids and Patrick's wife came. But when I showed up at Love Field to check in for my last flight, I was early, so we were downstairs eating some nachos or something, and one of my buddies came running down and said, "You better get up and check in for your flight. It's getting close." Well, I still had about 20 minutes, and so I wasn't in any big hurry, but he said, no, come on up. So I did, and as I was checking in on the computer, my friend kind of leaned over and said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I know this is your last flight, but there's an FAA guy who wants to sit, in fact, there are 2 of them, who want to sit on your jump seat and observe you to and from," I was going down to Houston Intercontinental from Dallas Love Field and back. And I said, a visit by the FAA is not something you really want to do, particularly on your last flight. So I got a little upset, and he said, "Don't say anything bad because they're right behind you." And I turned around, and there are my 2 brothers, Bill and John. And, they had come all the way down from Boston just to fly with me on my last flights and go to the parties and stuff. And my wife, Karen, had arranged that, and I was completely clueless about it. I had no idea they were coming. So that was a big day for me, and made better by the fact that they came. Yeah. It was really nice.
And they got the fire hoses over the plane too, right?
They did. I don't know if they're still doing that, but yeah, as you taxi in and make the turn into the final line to the jetway, they actually it was a little prior to that. They don't want to hose down the jetway, but yeah, they have 2 fire trucks, one on one side, one on the other, and they big overspray over the top of the airplane, and then turn on the windshield wipers. It was pretty neat. The Southwest made a very, very nice going away party for me.
Good. Yeah. So did you ever have any problems with it in the cockpit or just sitting for so long?
No, I didn't at all. In fact, when I had that second knee surgery, I was a captain with Southwest, and I had to be off for a while. Of course, I couldn't fly. And then when it was time to go back, I kind of sat down with them. I said, "Well, I feel good, but what do you want to do?" And so they ran me into the simulator, and there are some problems they can plug into the simulator that involve heavy use of the rudder. And a guy with a real bad knee is not going to do too well on those exercises. So they did pretty much everything they could do to make sure that I could forcefully use the rudder in case I had to. Mm-hmm. And but after that, it was just fine.
Good. Yeah. So fast forward, after you had that surgery in the 90s where you were classified as some improvement, When did it start to bother you again?
Oh, I think it was probably, let's see, I retired in '03, and probably about 5 or 6 years after that, I used to walk every morning for about 45 minutes up and down hills, and I began to have a little more pain in the knee than I used to have, and I finally stopped walking on the hills, and then I began to shorten my walks, and I said, man, I've got to address this. And that's when I went to talk to the doctor about that. And he tried I think it was over a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, he tried some what they call Synvisc shots. I guess it's a synthetic viscous fluid that they inject into your knee. And that gave me some help, but after about the fourth or fifth one, I knew that if I wanted to get any more permanent relief, I'd probably have to have surgery on it again.
So was it right away determined that you needed to have a knee replacement, or were there some other options?
I no, I when I saw this surgeon over in Fort Worth, he took one look at the X-ray and looked at me and said, "Well, it's bone on bone." And we. I kept asking him if there are any other options, but no, the only option was a total knee replacement, or I could live with it. And I didn't. I didn't want to live with it. Let's see, I'm 72 now. I was 71 when I had this surgery, and I think if I had waited, 5, 6, 7, 8 more years, there's a point where maybe you should not be doing this. So I wanted to get the surgery and the recovery out of the way as soon as possible. And so that was the only answer, total knee replacement. And we had Karen and I had a bunch of questions for him, which he answered satisfactorily. And he showed me a model of was it a Biomet knee, I think it was, and how it worked. And I wondered how it would make up for the loss of the posterior cruciate ligament. He said, "Oh, you don't need it." He said the prosthesis takes care of all that, and he showed me how it did it. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Good. So tell us about the time leading up to the surgery and then going into surgery.
Well, there really wasn't much time leading up to it. I think we saw him on January 30th of last year, and the surgery was February 18th. And I had to go in for the usual pre-op stuff. I think a blood test, and we went to a class over at Harris Southwest in Fort Worth, where they have hip and knee replacement people show up, and they just go over all the things that you're going to encounter, some of the things you're going to have to do at home for your recovery and therapy, and I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah, between that and the doctor and his physician's assistant, I thought we were well prepared for what was going to happen. It's a little more major surgery than anything I'd had before.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of carpentry work going on.
Yeah, gosh, I guess it is. Not long prior to that, I had been seeing a therapist here in Arlington for my shoulder, and I was asking him about some of the experience he's had with patients, about maybe recommendations about surgeons and all that. And he said something I thought was pretty interesting, that the patients that seem to have be most pleased are the ones who use younger surgeons. And I kind of wondered why that was, until I watched a YouTube video of a knee replacement. I said, man, it is a violent procedure that that they the way they replace your knee, and I don't know, maybe just younger guys do it better. I don't know.
Well, maybe it's just that it is probably physically taxing.
Oh, I think very much so. Yeah.
So was that on purpose that you were able to have the surgery so fast, or did something open up?
Well,
sooner?
he had an open date, and we picked it, and I figured, why wait? We could get everything done between all the pre-op stuff between the time I first saw him and the day of surgery.
Yeah.
And so I did it.
So you had had two surgeries prior to this. So after you woke up from surgery, how was your experience different from those previous surgeries?
Well, let's see. Initially, not much different because I was heavily medicated, of course, and
Yeah.
but this may sound silly, but the first thing that I realized when I woke up was how hungry I was. Uh, we couldn't eat anything until after midnight the night before, and by the time I woke up, it was about 5 or 6 in the
Oh,
afternoon,
wow. Yeah.
and I was hungry.
Yeah.
I was already on the in the recovery room. I think I got some saltines and a drink or something, but then I get up to the floor, and they'd already fed the people on the floor, but so they said, "Oh, no problem. We'll get you what you want." So I think I had a burger and something else, a salad maybe, which was pretty good. But that was my first recollection of what happened when I woke up.
That sounds kind of like me. I get that from you. I don't care if it hurts. Just give me some food.
Yeah. Yeah, when I finish breakfast, I start worrying about lunch. I finish lunch, I start worrying about dinner. Same deal, I guess.
So the rehab, I was really surprised with your pleasantly surprised. So talk to us about that and how quickly you were able to recover.
Well, it's a long recovery. The Let's see, I slept through the night fairly well, had breakfast, and they told me that I could go home after I've done 2 laps around the floor of this where I was in the hospital, one at a time. Not going to do 2 at once, but
Yeah.
so I think it was later that morning or early in the afternoon. They got me out of bed and got me on a walker, and there was a therapist with me, and took a slow walk around the perimeter of the hospital inside, and then went back to the room, and she showed me some basic exercises to do, and after a while we went and did it again, and so that was that. And I went home later that afternoon, so it was one night in the hospital, and that was it. Um, and then they had, before I left the hospital, they set up the home therapy, and that was going to be 5 days a week for 2 weeks, and then 3 days a week for 2 weeks, where a home therapist came in for an hour each time. And therapy is a must. Doing
Yeah.
the therapy, and it's probably the most important part of this because, of course, they want to get your strength back and also the flexion because of all the work they did on your knee and the ligaments. You just had to start from scratch getting that knee bent. And I can't remember what the flexion was the first day, maybe 60 or 70 degrees. And after therapy, they want you to be at 120 minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So after all that, 4 weeks of therapy, I went in to see the doctor, and I was only at 110. And technically, therapy was over, and I was really not happy with that. So I asked them if they would order some additional therapy people, and they said sure. So I went down the corner and saw the therapist that I'd used for my shoulder, and I think I was there for about a month or so. And probably 3 days a week, and he got me up to over 120. And, so they were happy with that, and I was happy with that. I have to say that there is a tremendous amount of pain involved with a knee replacement. The doctor told me it would be about 6 weeks, and for me it was about 7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just got to work through that. For some people, pain medication works, hydrocodone, and I had another one. I can't remember the name of it, but I didn't like it. I don't like the way it makes me feel, and I don't think it relieves the pain much. So one thing they gave me was a machine that not to flex my knee passively, but this was a machine where you could put some ice blocks in this little container, and it would circulate the cold air through and around your knee, the cold water through and around your knee, as well as pump up your thigh and your calf.
Oh, so you had compression and
Right,
cooling. Do
to
you remember,
massage it.
was it Game Ready? Or there's another, I think DJO has one too.
I don't remember the name of the, gosh, I've got it downstairs, but I don't remember the name of the company. But that was fantastic. And I'll tell you, during that 6 weeks, ice became my best friend because it really, really helped the pain. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night just with a lot of pain, and I'd put a new block of ice in there and start that thing, and it really gave me a lot of relief, as did I finally got rid of that prescription pain medicine and alternated with Tylenol and what's the other one? Ibuprofen.
Yeah.
And that helped. But time and therapy are really the only things that get you through it.
And with the knee replacement, you were full weight bearing right away, or did you ease into weight bearing?
Good question. They wanted you to be weight bearing as much as possible, and I was on a walker for maybe a week and a half, then on one crutch for a while, no, never was on a crutch. I was on a cane for, can't remember how long that was, but yes, they wanted me weight bearing and walking as much as possible, which was kind of difficult because right after I got back from the hospital, we had a series of snow and ice storms here, so I wore a hole in the carpet in the house and doing my laps around the bottom floor of the house. But it didn't stay cold that long here, and after a while, I was able to get out on the streets and walk around the neighborhood and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So, is there anything you would change about the experience, or just how your knee is doing today?
No, I wouldn't. I'm real happy with it. I've talked to some people who they had bad experiences with it, but I guess I was very fortunate. I didn't. My knee is fine. There are some things I can't do and I shouldn't do, and I guess I basically have to act my age. But one thing I asked them, my grandson Ian was starting to play hockey around that time, and so I asked the doctor if it was okay if I skated. And I grew up on skates and thought, well, why not? And he said, well, do you know how to skate? And I said, oh, yeah. He said, is there a chance you'd fall? I said, well, yeah, there's always a chance you'd fall. And he said, well, you do realize that your knee is breakable, don't you? And this light dawned,
I still think you should get a bubble wrap and just bubble wrap your knee and then go skating.
Yeah, that would work. Just wrap a whole bunch of bubble wrap around my right leg. But no, I've given it up. I'd like to do it, but there's some certain things I can't run. He said, no impact. He said, walk as long as you want, swim, do all that stuff, but don't do anything like play tennis or jog because it's not made for that.
Yeah. And there's different types of knees, and the knee you have is specific to your needs. Your knee's needs.
Yeah, it does have a life. I think he told me 10, 12 years or so, and I'd like to keep that as long as I can.
Yeah, hopefully.
I don't want to do that again.
Hopefully get some more miles out of that one.
Yeah. One thing that I've talked to a lot of people who have had both knees replaced. Some do it a year apart, some do it weeks apart, and I know some people who've done them both at the same time. And I think if I had to have both knees replaced, I would do it at the same time. The recovery is long and it's hard, and I think that I'd rather go through that once rather than have to go through twice with that second knee. Just get it out of the way once.
Well, good. You've given us a lot of insight into that. Anything else that you would add for anything that it doesn't sound like you'd change anything? So not really any advice to the engineers out there. I guess therapy is a big thing, and maybe you've been successful because you did extra therapy and you were just really strong and your flexion was pretty good after that.
Yeah, that's the major thing is keeping up with therapy and just doing it. Just whatever you have to do it. It's going to hurt, but when it's all said and done, you're much better off because of it.
Yeah. Well, every doctor likes to hear the patients are compliant, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think I'm fortunate that I'm not a heavy man. I only weigh about 160 pounds, which is what I weighed when I graduated from college. And I think that helps. I think people who put on a lot of weight might have a lot of difficulty going through all this.
Yeah.
But, it was difficult for me, but I think it would be more difficult for people like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I guess it's kind of that's kind of the conundrum they're in. If they're overweight, but it's hard to exercise because of knee pain, then just feeds into that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And some people don't have a history of exercise anyway, and so it's difficult to change your ways.
Okay, well, thanks for giving us that story and all the information. And so any engineers out there that work at Biomet, we've got a happy customer. So you just got a free testimonial right there.
There you go. Yep.
So guys, I know that going through the product development journey is pretty tough. So we're always here to support you. And if you ever want to connect with others going through the same thing, we have a Facebook group for you. Just head over to facebook.com and search Inspired by AMUA. That's obviously the name of the podcast, same name as the group. So we'll see you in there, and we'll see you next Tuesday. So until then, AMUA.
Mahalo for joining us. If you're new to riding the waves of medical device product development, or if you've been in development for a while already, Inspired by AMUA is here to surf with you. Want to be a master of the waves? Text HANG10, that's all one word, HANGTEN, to 44222. We'll send you the most common wipeouts companies make in product development so you can avoid them and reach master wave status. Again, that's HANG10 to 44222. We publish a new episode every Tuesday, so catch us at inspiredbyamua.com. AMUA,